Hey, everybody, it's good to be live again. Well, it was 2020, 9 years into my corporate news career, that I began to notice that my stories were being suppressed by my news outlet, Fox 26 Houston at the time, uh, on an unprecedented level. And for the first time in my career, I had a boss telling me that if I reported certain facts, I would be fired. Not just if I didn't, if I said them on my social media, I'd be fired. Not even if I said them on TV. I mean, they had an absolute crackdown on certain topics. And we're specifically talking in this instance about treatment for the new illness. If I said certain facts about that, I'm fired. So there was suddenly this new suppression in corporate news, this new darkness cast over shadow areas where you can't go as a reporter. I was stunned, appalled as a journalist, and it was late in that year that I turned on Rush Limbaugh, and he was addressing that exact topic. He had noticed it himself. It's not too hard to notice. You don't have to be a newsroom insider to be seeing that there are facts on the ground and that the media is not covering. The media is not uttering a whisper about these facts. And why is that? So today marks the first anniversary of the death of the greatest talk radio personality of all time, Rush Limbaugh. So today I'm going to play some of his sound bites that I had collected over the past year or two that stood out to me when I heard Rush address the exact issue that I was dealing with inside my corporate newsroom. I hit record on that. So I'm going to play that soundbite for you guys right now.
We don't have a media, folks. We don't have a media that reports the news. And this is another example of how ignoring news is just as crucial as presenting a bunch of bogus news. I mean, I don't think it's any more complicated than that. So many people are conditioned to accept whatever they see on TV as truthful and objective, no matter what. This is what people think.
Yep, Rush was noting the exact same thing, and the fact that a lot of news consumers do still seem to take the news as gospel. Well, these are the only set of facts or side of information that the news is saying. So I guess that's the ultimate truth. And me as a media insider being like, okay, I know for fact that there's these other facts I'm not allowed by Fox Corp to speak. I just hope the audience gets that those facts still exist. I just can't report them. Weird times. I was thrilled to see Rush noting that. Now, I also wanted to talk today about one of the untold stories of Rush Limbaugh and Bo Snerdly, his right-hand man on the radio. Snerdly was his producer and call screener. And one of his best friends. Now, I'm going to have a friend on to talk about this untold story. Victor, I see, is in the green room right now. Victor, hold on. Before I get to you, I got to shout out the sponsor of my coverage, which is Noble Gold. So how's the year been going? We hope it's been good, but I know it's been tough for a lot of people. Lots of us have woken up and smelt the roses, and some have smelt coffee instead. All of us has realized how quickly time rushes past. You're that much closer to retirement and that much closer to not earning. But in the meantime, you've got some catching up to do. With crypto and crypto and the market risky right now, the inflation running over 8%, where are you going to put your money and keep it to keep up and beat it? We might want to talk to an expert at Noble Gold and run through the options for keeping your money safe. No pressure, no hassle, no call centers. This month, Noble Gold is giving away a free 1/10 ounce solid gold American Eagle coin with any qualifying plan you start. Just speak to someone who knows what they're talking about. How good would that feel? You can call 877-646-5347 or visit noblegoldinvestments.com. Link down below in my description. Noble Gold. All right. With that being said, got to tell you the story of Rush Limbaugh and Bo Snerdly, how they met. And Victor is joining me live. Victor, how are you?
Hey, Ivory, doing great.
So you lived there in Palm Beach, where Rush lived for years and broadcasted for years in Palm Beach, Florida. And so you actually have met Bo Snerdly a few times, I guess. I mean, that's Palm Beach is where I met you by chance over a year ago. Okay, so tell me this story of basically how Rush and Snerdly met.
Sure. Well, I can't tell you exactly how they met, but I can tell you one of the untold stories, and there are many of them, that he shared with us shortly after Rush announced that he had cancer. There was a guest speaker at an event that I went to that had to cancel. So that person knew James Golden, Bo Snerdly, asked him to fill in for him. So, of course, when we found out that it was going to be Bo Snerdly, everyone thought, "Oh, wow! I mean, this is just a treat. We're going to be able to get firsthand info and tell him to pass, to Rush how much everyone cared about him." Anyhow, James Golding did get down to business and speak about other things, but first he wanted to tell the story about how he was going to fight for clearing Rush's name, and with all the defamatory comments made about him, he started telling us a story that I had never heard before. And he was talking about, before he ever worked for Rush, he had an office in a hallway. Down at the end of the hallway was Rush Limbaugh's office. We're talking about over 30 years ago at that time. This was told to us a year ago. So over a year ago. So he said that he used to clip news articles out, run down to the end of the hall, knock on the door and say, Mr. Limbaugh, I thought you might be interested in this. And Rush would usually use what he gave him. He thought that he had a knack for finding these stories. And then one day he said that Rush walked down the hall to his office, didn't know that he didn't know that Bo Snerdly was on the phone to a finance company. Evidently, he had taken a loan and he used his car for collateral. He was behind on things. And he was in a heated discussion on the phone. Rush walked by, heard this, and didn't stop, but he knew something was wrong. So he paged James Golding, said, "Come down to the office." And he said, "Hey, I heard something. Is everything okay? You all right?" And he said, well, he said, "I'm in trouble with my finance company, and they're probably going to take my car away, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." And he said that Rush said, "Look, take it one day at a time and see how things go." So the next day, he said that he got a page, go down to Rush's office. In the afternoon, he went down, and Rush said, "Come in and close the door, sit down." He handed him an envelope. Oh, I left out the part. He told him that he was in trouble with his car in the finance company. And Rush asked him, "How much money are we talking about?" And I don't want to give the amount, but it was thousands of dollars. It wasn't one, two, or three. It was thousands of dollars. So anyhow, when he went down to Rush's office the next afternoon, Rush handed him an envelope and said, "Open it up." And James Golden said in the envelope was a check for the exact amount that he said that he needed to get out of this mess. And he said, "Oh, thank you, Mr. Limbaugh. Thank you so much. I'll pay you back." And Rush, shook his fingers at him and said, No. This is not a loan. This is a gift. I only ask that you take it. Don't tell anyone about it. Take care of your problem, and we don't need to discuss it anymore. And so after that, not that much farther down the road, he ended up working for Rush. And he never told anyone that story until that night. I think he has told it since then. But that was the first time anyone in the room had ever heard it. There wasn't a dry eye in the room, including Bo Snerdly when he was telling the story. And, it made us all think about what a kind, decent human being Rush was. With all the defamatory comments made about him, he helped someone who didn't even work for him get out of a financial mess. Plus, he was an African American. We're always been told that he didn't like African Americans. And so this just puts all this phony business about him being a ruthless, uncaring person, it just blows it right out of the water. And I thought it was a great story. We enjoyed it.
I love that story. Yeah. So you said that was just like a couple weeks after Rush had announced he had terminal cancer, right?
That's correct.
Wow. Yeah. I was just Googling a pic of Snerdly so you can see there's Rush and Snerdly. Um, yeah, Snerdly was Rush's call screener and good friend. And that's a pretty neat story of kind of their beginnings before Snerdly even worked for Rush. Thank you so much, Victor, for telling that story.
You got it.
All right. Well, you enjoy sunny Florida.
We're doing
And
it.
All right. I'll see you later.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. So there you go. That kind of tells a bit of Rush Limbaugh's character, that he would help a guy out like that who didn't even work for him, just worked down the hall at the time. Pretty neat to hear. So I want to play for you guys some of the sound bites that I really liked from Rush. And one of them, just in the past year, I just recorded some of those. I was going to get nice clean copies from his website today, but the video's not working on his website. Maybe so many people are on his website on this anniversary of his death. I don't know, but luckily I had those recordings anyway. So Rush was asked shortly before his death about how to be successful kind of in radio as well as just in whatever you want to get into. And so here is part of what Rush said about how to be successful.
When I was a young teenager, well, I wanted to do radio since I was 8. So when I would run into anybody who was in it, I just asked them question after question after question. I asked so many questions. One guy said, it sounds to me like you're more interested in how to do it than actually doing it. I said, what do you mean? Well, at some point, you got to stop asking questions and start doing things. And I said, well, I'm not old enough to start doing things. I'm not old enough to get hired yet. Well, yes, you are if you really want to. But at some point, you got to stop asking and you got to start doing. I mean, you can't learn everything about doing something just by asking about it, which I knew. It was still some relevant advice, probably from somebody who was tired of all my questions. But I have noticed that I've gotten much less of that than I sought myself. And, I ask people in TV because it interests me. I'll talk to veterans at Fox. How many of these young people that you've hired have come to you and sought your advice about how to advance or how to do television, how to do what they're trying to do? It's amazing the number of people who say none. They all show up thinking they know everything. If they've been hired, they think they know everything, and they don't need any advice. That's just a casual observation. I don't mean anything substantive by it. I think it's just cultural differences. I think, and if there's one thing about successful people that they all have in common, is that they love it. Whatever it is, it's their passion. It's their number one passion. It's the thing they love the most. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, the thing they love the most is their hobby, something they don't get paid for. But the next thing to do is to realize that you live in a place with boundless opportunity. Don't listen to the noise. Don't listen to the pessimists. Do not seek advice from people who failed at what you want to do, because they're everywhere, and they don't want to be alone. Can't tell you the number of people who tried to talk me out of it. Rush, it's vicious. It'll eat you up and spit you out. The chances are so slim, it's just a road to misery. And I decided after a while not to listen to those people. And then I decided after a while not to even talk to them. I was only going to find people who had succeeded and try to learn from them. Now then, there are basics. I don't care what it is that you want to do. You have to have a well-rounded knowledge and, more importantly, the ability to demonstrate that you have it. You have to be able to. This is not just broadcasting or radio. You have to be able to communicate what you know. You have to do things that are going to inspire confidence in yourself. You have to really like yourself to be confident, and it is confidence that will open up opportunity to you. It is confidence that will allow you to transmit what you know in ways that are persuasive and impressive. Now, there's some other things that are common too. Sadly, I've run out of time, but I can add to the list here when we come back. So hang on, we'll do that in just a second.
This holiday season, stay up to date and in the know.
Rush gave this advice just about a month before he found out he had stage 4 lung cancer. So after commercial break, he came back and had this to say.
But even to this day, if you walked into a radio station and wanted to do a talk show, nobody would tell you to do it like I do. That's not a criticism. The point is, don't be constrained by norms. Let your passion dictate what you want to do. And be brave. And don't listen to negatives. And another thing, whatever you do, do not get distracted and absorbed over things not under your control. It's just a waste of time. It is a psychologically destructive thing to do, to try to get involved in things that you can't control. You have enough challenges trying to deal with those things that you can control. But I really do think that wanting it is 80% of it. All things being equal, you're educated, you're able to speak, and I mean in anything. You don't begin every sentence with, hey, what time is it? So, let me look at my watch. What time is it? It's 2:12. Just learn to speak what you think. Don't be afraid to say what you think. And be passionate about what it is. And if there's no money in it, find a way to make money at it. Create the revenue stream if you can. It's not universally true for everybody, but there's no substitute for desire. One of the greatest tight ends in football today, a guy named George Kittle, number 85, San Francisco 49ers. He has a philosophy. He's the hottest tight end in football now. He believes that once you get to the NFL, the talent is so pretty equal that the difference in success and failure in the NFL is mental. Focus, confidence, weeding out all distractions. Don't get hung up on things you can't control.
Don't get hung up on things you can't control. That was great advice that I took back in late 2019 from Rush. He had a massive audience. I know in the year or two leading up to his death, he was talking about weekly audience of 27 million listeners weekly, as I recall. But this article here talks about up to 43 million listeners. Massive audience. And he was really, he had a special relationship with that audience. His brother, David Limbaugh, actually talked about it. And I believe today is when he recorded something kind of honoring his brother on the anniversary of his death, talking about the relationship between Rush and his listeners. Here's what he said.
And I knew he was loved, but I had no idea until after he died the depth, the actual intimacy that people felt. And we're talking, I dare say, millions of people. It's not just, 10% of his audience that was really into him. I mean, so many people have expressed to me that they feel profound, deep personal loss with his death, and that they lost the best friend they never had, or the brother or father figure, their surrogate brother or father figure. They identified with him. They spent 3 hours a day with him on radio. They felt like he was such a good friend, such a close confidant. And when he died and was no longer broadcasting, they feel an actual palpable void in their lives. And that has been really touching to me, because it is something that I don't think other personalities have done with people. And there's so many great hosts out there, and they're going to carry on the tradition. But Rush had a unique bond with his audience. His big love, besides his wife and his family and his friends, was his audience.
Yeah, shortly, 40 million listeners, according to this article. Now, shortly before his death, he was addressing this issue of the big tech, the big tech corporations, the stranglehold they have on information right now, and the danger that is to free speech, and these politicians who talk big about wrangling in big tech. But why doesn't anything honestly happen to make a difference with the corrupt big tech? Rush addressed this in one of his broadcasts. Here it is.
And they were going to be read the riot act, and they were going to be told that they better shape up or else. And nothing ever happens. And why? I'll tell you why. They've got so much to offer. They got campaign contributions to offer. But more importantly, let's say that you are Congressman Foghorn Bluehorn from pick your favorite state. And the guy that runs Google, the guy that runs Facebook, can assure you that when anybody puts your name, Foghorn Bluehorn, into the search window, that nothing but positive stories are going to come back. What would that be worth to you? Might it be worth looking the other way at what the tech guys are doing when they're censoring conservatives, when they are literally preventing the viewpoint of over half of the people in this country from being mentioned, discussed, and promoted? I think you'd make that deal if you're Foghorn Bluehorn and you're promised positive search results and maybe a campaign donation here and there. That's all it would take. These people are so big. They're so powerful. Plus, what can they offer Foghorn Bluehorn when his legislative career is over? When Congressman Foghorn Bluehorn decides that it's over and he wants to go into the private sector, why, guess what? There could be a big position open at Facebook or Google in their legal department, and he doesn't have to do any work. He's got a no-show gig. He's a rainmaker. Foghorn Bluehorn.
Yeah, sadly, members of Congress are a little bit easier to compromise than you might hope. So when you're voting for your next member of Congress, it's probably a good idea to look at whether that person cares what other people think, whether they care about a cushy life, and whether they care about being elite and powerful. And if any of those are true, maybe you don't want to vote for that person. I don't know. It's really hard to tell. It's really hard to tell sometimes when you vote for someone how easily compromised they will be, right? So for people who listen to Rush, a lot of you probably have noticed some very interesting commercial breaks from time to time. Very, very interesting commercial breaks. I'm going to play one of the commercials from Rush Limbaugh's show. This is the 911 call center in Seattle.
Hi, you've reached the new City of Seattle 911 call center. To better serve you after successfully defunding the police and losing more than half of our citizens and businesses, we invite you to personally select the service of your choice at this time. Oh, and if this is a serious medical emergency, get an Uber to your nearest hospital, since we can't send the police with paramedics anymore. Okay, if you're a victim of violence, press 1 to let us know where this offense occurred, and we will remove the statue or offending symbol that triggered you. If this call involves the theft of so-called personal property, press 2 to reach a privilege counselor who will help you understand the root causes of your privilege and white fragility. For all other sources of conflict that you may have experienced, keep in mind that certain minorities only have to obey the laws they agree with. Now, to help reduce your increased stress level at this time, we invite you to meditate on this tone.
Now, another apology in a never-ending...
Yeah, the commercial breaks were pretty hysterical. I always had something very interesting. So Fox and Friends actually did a really nice segment with Rush's wife, Catherine, this morning. I want to play some of that for you now.
Greetings and welcome back. Rush Limbaugh here behind the golden EIB microphone.
Thank you so much for welcoming us into your beautiful home. How are you doing? It's been a year now.
I'm doing well for the most part. You know, it's been very difficult, but knowing how many people are out there praying for me, praying for Rush, I very much think this was the nation's loss.
When we pulled into your driveway and we walked in, I felt his presence. There are so many wonderful symbols of America throughout this house, and that was important to him, right?
To me, it really represents Rush in so many ways, not because of the grandness of it. That's not really him. It represents success, American freedom.
I'm sure he always felt like, I'm going to be big. God gave me this voice.
Rush Limbaugh with talent on loan from God.
But when did it actually happen for him?
He would like to say when he was 8 and he was broadcasting from his bedroom down to his mother and brother. But the big break probably was New York.
As usual, doing this program with half my brain tied behind my back to make it fair.
What was he like when he was off the air? What were his hobbies?
He was always mentally engaged, whether it was watching a television program or reading his iPad. He always said that life is show prep, and I think it was very much in his case.
Every day I wake up, and the first thing I do is thank God that I did.
His faith grew later in life, and especially toward the end. What can you describe what his faith was like?
Absolutely. He knew there was a much higher plan, a much higher purpose. He believed strongly in his relationship with God.
I don't like making things about me, but there are going to be days that I'm not going to be able to be here.
When you hear cancer, your life changes forever. I remember him saying that.
Life is the most precious thing we have, especially when right in front of you is the prospect of it being taken away.
One of the perks, I guess, of having a diagnosis like this is that you have a little bit of time to hear some of the wonderful eulogies.
He is the greatest fighter and winner that you will ever meet.
Break in now with breaking news as we have learned that longtime conservative radio host Rush Limbaugh has died.
You were on air immediately sharing that news.
It is with profound sadness our beloved Rush passed away this morning.
I wanted them to hear that devastating news in the most familiar way possible. I knew this audience would remember where they were when they lost their hero.
What did you love the most about him, and what do you miss the most?
He's one of a kind. He always led us to believe that America's best days are ahead. He would say, I'm just a voice on the radio, but he was so much more. I call him America's Winston Churchill.
I want the country to survive. I want the country to succeed.
The impact that your family has on this country, has that hit you?
Absolutely. Rush is buried in St. Louis. There's 2 benches because I thought anyone who'd go to visit him would want to talk with him. I happened to be sitting there when, out of nowhere, a man gave me his rosary that he had brought there to give to Rush. And in that time, I felt he's still with us. He's living on through these people.
So that whole segment from Fox and Friends is actually up on rushlimbaugh.com if you want to watch the full thing. I think it's an 8-minute piece they did on him. So I briefly spoke with Rush and Snerdly when I was 18 years old. So I was what was referred to as a Rush baby, in that my dad raised me on Rush Limbaugh. My dad was a logger who would cut the trees and haul them in his semi, and I would ride with my dad as a little kid. My dad would be listening to Rush Limbaugh in the 90s. And so I heard that from an early age. Now, when I was in high school senior, I was in speech class, my teacher assigned us to do a persuasive speech. At the time, global warming was a really contested issue. And it was clear, looking at some of the evidence of climate change going back centuries. There was the medieval warming period, there was the ice age, that the climate would change on its own without technology. So I wanted to do a persuasive speech on this. And I said, let me call into Rush Limbaugh and see, Rush liked to talk about this issue. See what advice Rush has for my speech. So I called up, and Snerdly answered the phone, and he put me on Rush's show. And here's the little transcript on rushlimbaugh.com. So rushlimbaugh.com literally has every bit of his show that's ever happened. So there is my little call with Rush from when I was 18 years old. But here's the thing, for show prep, or for speech prep, Rush was like, I'm just going to give you a free subscription to my website. And so I ended up having full access to his website and ended up listening to him a lot. Once I was a reporter, I would be out on the road all the time, driving to these stories that are 2 to 3 hours away. And I would just listen to Rush. And so I was one of those people who was tuning in a lot, contributing to his supposed 43 million audience members. So when we discovered that Rush had cancer, his wife Catherine put a call out to the viewers to send in any notes that they wanted to send to Rush, so that Rush could hear from them during this difficult time for his health. And my mom, I think, got the email or something from Catherine, and she decided to write in this was, I think, within weeks before Rush's death. My mom wrote an email about how Rush had impacted my dad and me. And then we actually lost my dad about a month after we found out Rush had cancer. And I remember talking to my dad on the phone about, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe Rush has cancer. Like, he's probably going to die soon. And my dad and I were both like, wow. And little did we know that my dad would beat Rush to it. And so my mom emailed Catherine talking about the loss of my dad, talking about how Rush had, meant a lot to me and my dad, and that I was now what Rush would refer to as an info babe. And so, surprise, surprise, my mom gets a package in the mail from Rush and Catherine Limbaugh. And it actually, I guess it had a nice little note to my family. And it had an American flag with an engraving of Rush's signature, as well as a Preserve America mug and this little picture of Rush. So Catherine Limbaugh actually sent this to my mom, and my mom then gifted it to me. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. So, and we were just little listeners. But anyway, so that's the story. And because Rush gave an alternative perspective to the narrative, he was greatly hated by the corporate news. And so it's interesting to see, if you actually listen to his show, that he wasn't anything that the corporate news said he was. They like to say he was racist and things, and obviously that stuff was not true. And he was a warm-hearted person who had a much different perspective than a lot of the corporate news people did, a lot of the drive-by media, as he said. So I'm just reading your comments now. I just want to tell you guys my story. I've never told anyone that, but I thought I'd tell the little story of Rush on this anniversary of his death. I know it was devastating for a lot of people. I actually, I do music as my hobby. Something I'm very passionate about is music. I play the guitar, and occasionally songs come to me through inspiration, and I've produced a few of those songs that have come, some of them in my sleep. Songs come to me. Anyway, I was meeting with my music producer last year, February, and I got together with him to track some of my song that we were making. We were making my very first single, which is now out on Apple Music, Spotify, iTunes. And when I sat down with my producer, he was so gloomy. There was like this dark shadow over his soul. And I was like, what's wrong? And he was like, Rush has stage 4 cancer. And it was like that's how it impacted the listeners. I mean, my producer and I learned by fluke that we had both listened to Rush Limbaugh. And my music producer was so devastated to hear that Rush, was basically had a death sentence, that he could barely even produce my song that day. And so everyone who listened to Rush a lot felt that. And David Limbaugh, Rush's brother, expressed that well today when he talked about how much Rush meant to his audience, that he was the friend that they had never met in person, but felt like they knew so well. So before we close out this show today, I want to close the show on one of Rush's songs that he occasionally played on his show. All the best to you guys, and here's the song.
Greetings and welcome back. It's El Rushbo on the cutting edge of societal evolution. Numerous requests are pouring in. This is a program that knows no limits and boundaries. We play tunes, we have bumper music, we have theme song parody, satire, and all that. We're having almost a miniature meltdown with requests for this.